Hi, my name is V. I make sewing content along with other things, and today I'm going to be testing out this $250 bias tape maker. So this is the Simplicity bias tape maker. I'm sure that if you've been on social media watching a lot of sewing content, you've seen this all the time. This bias tape maker right now is currently discontinued, so it's going for like $250, $300 from eBay. I'm not sure how much it is or it was retail, but I got it for $50 off of Facebook Marketplace, and it's probably one of my greatest finds, including the sewing cabinet here. If you're unfamiliar with it, this is what it basically looks like on the inside, and it is designed to feed your fabric through the bias tape attachment to then be pressed into this thermal plate here, or this iron plate here that irons all of your bias tape at the same time as it gets fed through. So it kind of just saves you that extra step of having to have your iron in one hand and then your other hand attending to the bias tape and making sure that the fabric kind of stays put. So the project that I'm going to be working on today in this video is I'm going to try to recreate this chiffon like overlay top that you can use to layer with a bunch of pieces. I've also really loved seeing on my Pinterest recently contrast binding on certain shirts, so I'll put a couple examples in here, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do with this top today. So for my main fabric, I have this like cream chiffon that I thought would be perfect for the base of the shirt. And then I have two polysatins that I'm kind of in between if I want to be a little more bold. I have leftover of this kind of like plum colored satin, and then I also have this black satin here if I want to go for just like a more classic look. I have a feeling that I'm gonna go with the black for now, but I will say this polysatin is a little thicker than this polysatin here. And I did do a couple of trial runs with some satin to go through the bias tape maker, and the bias tape maker doesn't do well with thicker satins, especially ones that you have to fold on the bias. So if the black satin doesn't work well with the bias tape maker, I'll probably switch over to this plum one because I just love the color. So I think this will be a really cute match if I do end up having to do that. So for the pattern, I basically just manipulated my bodice block that I made and basically just chopped off the top parts of the back and front bodice, so it's like half of what it's supposed to be. And then the rest of them, I just made large rectangles to cover the bottom portion of the shirt. And this is gonna be gathered in tiers. So I have this shorter one here that will be the top tier. So yeah, it was a pretty easy pattern to make, and I did it all on Adobe Illustrator. Probably took me like 5 minutes. So my first order of business is definitely making the bias tape, because that is definitely the rate limiting step for me. The basic construction of the shirt probably is only going to take me 15 minutes. So the bias tape is definitely going to be the longest step here. So I'm going to start with that first, and then we can decide if the plum satin works better than the black or vice versa. So let's do that. Okay, so I'll show you guys how I make the bias tape. It's going to be pretty simple for the most part, but I can already tell this fabric is super hard to fold. I did use this for making a prototype of a dress, and I do remember it being a little difficult to iron. So I'm roughly going to be cutting 16 by 16 inch strip of this. So that's what we're going to need to do first. I'm not quite sure what happened to the clip here, but I'll show you guys right now on a piece of paper what I did. So imagine this is that square piece of fabric that I just cut out. I literally just took it and then rearranged it and attached the straight sides of the pieces together like this. It doesn't matter which straight side you attach, like it's a square, so it doesn't matter. But that's basically what I did, and I sewed them together, and that's what leads us to this point now. Okay, so I sewed those two pieces together, and now we have this piece here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm making 3/4 single fold bias tape, which means I need to double that to make it 1.5. But yeah, basically I'm just going to mark. Satin's so hard because it just pulls. Do my best to like hold it. So we got one there, and then we just keep going basically. I'm using this quilting ruler to kind of help me figure out where 1.5 is. So now that I have this piece here, I'm going to turn it over to the right side, and they basically should line up like this. Now to make it continuous, you just offset it by 1 like this, so the lines match up. And this is kind of the hard part, but you have to sew them together. Take these two right sides together, offsetting the lines, and I sew these like this. And then we're gonna have like a tube at the end. Okay, so I went ahead and connected it here at that line. And now I'm going to start cutting along all of the lines. Starting on either side is fine. But this is the part that takes the longest because you wanna make sure that you cut it as evenly as possible, because if your bias tape is uneven and it gets fed through the machine, it kind of creates problems with inconsistency. So yeah, I'm choosing to cut outside of the chalk line. Okay, perfect. Here's our strip. I'm gonna go back through and just make sure that all of these seams are pressed nicely before I put it through the bias tape maker. Okay, so I have my bias tape maker here. I turned it on so this hot plate is heating up, and I'm basically going to roll this bias tape strip that I just made onto this roller here, and I can tuck the end into this slit here, like this. And now I'm just going to roll it on, basically. Okay, so once I have it all rolled up here, I'm gonna set the rest of my machine up, which is basically just these two pieces here, and I have my 3/4 tip in. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and feed it through like a normal bias tape maker. Just gonna use a needle to help me feed it through. Like this. And it seems like it's feeding through well. And I'm gonna, these rubber pieces here kind of help guide the fabric and keep it in place. So I'm gonna make sure that there's enough room there. I'm gonna put this presser piece back in, and then we should be ready to go. I'm really nervous because last time I did satin, it didn't go well. So let's run this and see how it goes. Okay, so here is the tape, and as you can see, it's not really holding its shape that well, but you can still see that there's a crease there, which is good. But yeah, this is like a lot better than how it worked with my other satin yesterday, but you could also see how like around the seams, it kind of doesn't hold its shape well at all. So I might have to like go through with my other iron and just kind of reinforce these lines that it made for me. But yeah, overall, I think this is a pretty useful tool. I wish it did a little bit better with my satin that I'm working with right now. I am really curious to see if with a satin like this, that's a lot thinner, if it would do a better job. My guess is probably yes, but this did a lot better than like this crepe back satin that I tried to use yesterday. It did not go well. But yeah, I have used it to make cotton bias tape before, and it works perfectly on the cotton. I really think it's just dependent on the type of material that you're using, which obviously is no fault at the machine. But yeah, I mean, for $50, I'm not mad about the purchase at all, but I'm glad it worked okay on this. So yeah, for now, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and use this black bias tape. If I find that it hinders me throughout the rest of the project, I might have to restart with this plum satin instead. But yeah, for now, let's just go ahead and move on. I'm gonna go ahead and just reinforce iron these pieces just so I have more, like a more structured bias tape. But yeah, and then we can move on to the rest of the project. Okay, you guys, so I finished cutting out all of my chiffon pieces, and I'm honestly just gonna sew these together before I deal with any sort of bias tape. I'm really scared for that, but for the construction, it's pretty easy. I have this back piece here, and then I have these two front pieces. So I'm going to connect them with French seams. If you don't know what French seams are, you basically start with wrong sides together, sew that, and then fold it over again, and then sew it. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I have sheer fabric, so that's probably the best way to finish off like the side bindings. But then for the armhole and then for the ruffle pieces, I'm going to use the bias tape. I'm thinking for the tie pieces in the front, I might, for the ruffles, do wrong sides together. That way I can bind the bias tape to the front and you can see the bias tape on the front side, if that makes any sense. But that's what I'm gonna do for now, but I'll just go ahead and attach these with French seams first before I do the ruffle pieces. Hold on. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. Since I'm doing French seams and I did 3/8 seam allowance, I have to half my seam allowance. Good thing I remembered. I can already tell that working with the chiffon is going to be really difficult because it frays really easily. Okay, so I have attached it at the seam here. I'm probably going to just go ahead and trim this a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is fold it over and sew again and basically like encapsulate the raw hem, and then that's how we make the French seam. I would cut this with pinking shears, but I don't think there's enough fabric for that. So I'm just gonna trim this as close as I can. Okay, so now this is our seam, this is the wrong side. When you turn it over, it's like a normal seam. But because we took that extra step, the raw finish is on the inside here. And then that will also reduce it from fraying. How cool. All right, I'm gonna repeat the steps with the rest of them. All right, the base of the shirt is done. So I'm gonna go ahead and hem these rectangle pieces all the way. And then once I finish hemming them, I'll go ahead and start gathering them and connecting the two tiers, connect it to the bottom of the shirt to basically finish out the shirt. And then we can start bias binding, which I say this in like everything. There's always one thing that makes me really nervous. And for me, it's using the actual bias tape. Okay, I'm back from class. I had to take a little intermission, but I have been hemming all of this stuff with a rolled hem, and I totally forgot that I had this rolled hem foot. I am blown away. Like, this has made all of this so much easier. Like, I've had to hem all sides basically of these rectangles, and I'm on the last side, and I'm just gonna show you guys because my mind is blown. Like, I totally forgot I had this foot, and thank goodness I've remembered I have it because it saved me so much time. Like, anyway, let me show you. Okay, so here's the rolled hem foot. I do, for this fabric, have to kind of like do a little bit of rolling as I go, but it's still better than having to like iron it and do 2 lines of stitching. But yeah, it just feeds it through like this, and it's pretty amazing. I find that if I don't roll it through with this fabric, sometimes it'll just like get way too, it won't roll as much as it should. Okay, I don't know if you can see the shirt very well, or like what I have of the shirt, but I have my 2 gathering pieces here. I'm gonna go ahead and start gathering them until they are the same length as that shirt over there, and it's 2 tiers, so I basically just have to gather both till they're the same length, and then we can attach them to the shirt. Yeah, I already did my gathering stitches. This part's always scary because chiffon especially is really delicate, and I'm gonna definitely fray the top a bunch, so I just need to be careful about this and just make sure I don't do too much damage. Might be more smart for me to do it on a surface so it's not tugging weird. Okay, I think I got the length down. I'm just going to make sure I evenly distribute the gathers here. Okay, so now I'm going to do the second tier here, and I'll probably connect both of the tiers before I connect it to the actual bodice. This cream color chiffon is gorgeous, by the way. I really love this color. I have both of the tiers here. Look at how pretty that is. I'm obsessed. It looks so good. I love this material. I've never done any project with like just chiffon, so this is amazing for me. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and baste these two together, take out the basting stitches, and then attach them to our final piece. Okay, here's a little try on of what I have so far. If you can tell, I did put the seam on the front, so when I bias bind it, it will flow to the front, but this is perfect. It fits perfectly. This is exactly what I wanted. And the chiffon is so cute and it drapes perfectly. And I think I did a pretty good job with self-drafting a replica of what I saw on Pinterest. So yay! Again, I still need to do the bias binding. I'm a little nervous about that one. It looks like for right now, I'm just gonna have two tie pieces, so like one at the neck and then one here on the seams, and then I'll just bind the armholes with the bias tape, because I don't think I really want to put one anywhere else. I was thinking maybe here if I wanted to, but I think the two should be fine. But yeah, I knew this was going to be an easy construction, so the next part is definitely going to be the hardest part with the bias tape, but I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I keep saying this, but I really, really love this fabric. All right, hi, it is the next day, and I'm gonna go ahead and do my best to attach the bias binding to the seam. The seam is falling apart. That is just the nature of the chiffon, so hopefully this bias tape will kind of help mask it a lot better. But my plan right now is I'm gonna leave about maybe a couple inches in the front, like 4 or 5, and then start the bias binding from there, so then I'll have this front part for the tie. Yeah, that's my goal for now. I'm just gonna attach it like regular bias binding, so I'll go ahead and just sew along the seam of my bias binding, and then we'll flip it over and do all the other stuff. I did not iron a middle crease. I don't know if I'm gonna regret not doing that, but I just think that this bias tape is like falling apart already on me, so I would rather just sew the seams first and then figure out folding it on afterwards. I don't know if I'm going to regret that or not, but our time is ticking because the chiffon keeps like fraying, so I definitely think that the sooner I do it the better. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that now. I do have a couple basting stitches here that are still showing regardless of the bias, so I need to make sure that I take those out. But the vision here is that once I fold it over, we'll have this nice contrast binding. And this is actually on the front of the shirt, so I'm gonna have to top stitch it down, but it'll be really cool, I think. I think it'll look like this in front of the shirt, and then it will lead into the tie. So I don't know if that made any sense, but so let me go ahead and trim this excess here, and then I can go ahead and fold over and sew the bias. Okay, I didn't finish off the bias tape here to make the, to finish off the tie, but look at how much that black trim added. Now imagine it on the collar and on the armhole. This is so cute. Why did this go so seamlessly? And I'm holding this bias tape to show you guys how much bias tape I have left from that continuous strip after using it for this. I definitely have enough to finish the armhole and the neck hole, which is amazing. Not having to iron the bias tape was honestly not as bad as I was expecting. I didn't have to fold it again to make a double fold. It probably would have made the seams a lot cleaner than they might look right now. But I mean, personally speaking, I don't really see a difference. So I also wish I made the ties a little longer, so it might not be like a bow, but I totally had some to spare. I was definitely just being conservative with my bias tape. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and finish up the armhole and the neckline with the rest of this bias tape, and then I'll be done. How cool is that? Oh my gosh. Alright, you guys, here is the final top. I'm so happy with how it turned out. This is like everything I envisioned. I love having the black bias binding as a contrast to the white. I think it just adds so much to the top. I honestly wish there was maybe another piece of like black at the bottom, or maybe I could have hemmed it using some bias tape as well to add that extra pop of contrast at the bottom. But other than that, this was such an easy sew. I'm sure you guys can tell this video is a lot shorter than the videos that I'm used to doing because it was honestly just that simple. And if you guys have a bodice block, I definitely recommend you guys to do the same thing. And this is honestly the perfect beginner sewing pattern hack, I guess, for you guys to do it at home if you've maybe never designed a pattern before. It was super, super, super easy. The hardest part was the bias binding. I think I mentioned that before. I definitely don't think that I would have tackled this project had I not had the bias tape maker, because I can't really just buy satin bias tape binding out in the store, so that's definitely something I would have need to have made, and having the machine kind of just gave me that extra push and like motivation to do it, because in theory, it made it a lot easier to do rather than doing it by hand. However, with that being said, I definitely think that it's doable to do it by just a normal manual bias tape maker and an iron. Definitely something you could do at home. You don't need this $250 machine just to make your bias tape. But again, I was definitely glad that I had it for this project. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this shirt. This was such an easy sew, and I'm really proud of myself that honestly, like the first draft of my digital patterning worked to create this shirt. But yeah, that was the entire video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, please let me know in the comments if you liked this shorter form video or if you like the longer one. I'm probably gonna keep putting out both because some projects don't need a 45-50 minute video just like this one. But yeah, obviously, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.